Tyler Gillespie.
So I'm going to start with some poems. I'm actually going to start with a poem that I wasn't expecting to read in honor of this performance. I wrote this last month when I saw an experimental jazz performance in New York City. I wrote this poem in 4 minutes. I think jazz and poetry have a lot in common in terms of the improv element and also the unexpectedness of it. A 4-minute poem, or poem written as John Zorn and his jazz band improvised a song to celebrate Hermetic Cartography Show at the Drawing Center 2025. A saxophone in his hand, bird trills. There's something about music that makes me want to drum kick, shoulder shimmy, head bob. My God, I fell in love with the musician again. The way he blows that sax, how could I not think of sex? It's only one letter off, torn page. Don't let me lie to you, my body is the bass with his fingers. The snare kicks up, I'm the snare. I don't care. Faster now, fast, fast, I'm sweating. I got lost in the music, now I'm back. Take a seat and tell me your deepest fear. No, please do not do that. Just kidding. Stand and watch the man as he plays. Okay, thank you. Yes, I forgot to tell you. So at this poetry reading / discussion, you can snap, you can clap, you can laugh, you can cry. I'm a semi-professional sad person. Do all the things, talk back. I'm going to start with some poems, and then I'm going to punctuate kind of the crossroads that I'm going to talk about with poetry as well. Oh, I'm like, first slide, I have this. Lots to manage. Can do it. Drum roll. Wrong direction. That's, yeah. Oh my God, yeah, that's me. I was like very vibey, feeling that. Oh, here we are. Perfect. Okay. So I have put some of the poems up there so you can follow along if you're interested. I wrote this poem for poets only, a sonnet, for them and no one else. So if you are not a poet, please stop reading or listening to this. Only poets should be here at this point. Like, seriously. If you are not a poet, then I am going to need you to stop, turn back, touch grass, drink a beer, or whatever non-poets do. Because I have a message for only poets to hear. Poets who write a word and then another word. Or poets who do not write a word. Who do not write anything at all. Maybe they paint poetically. Maybe they stare at the moon wistfully and erotically. Only poets should be reading this. Now the coast is clear. So if you are still here, then you must be a poet. You've stayed till the end. Sure. Thank you. Perfect. Improv. We will be talking about that, actually. Okay, so I wanted to start with this poem because I feel like I can scooch back. A lot of the times people get really weirded out by poetry and they're like, even today someone was like, I'm not a good writer, I'm not a poet. There are many ways to be a poet. It's about looking at the world. It's about your own experience of it. And so I really want to shake that off and say, today you are a poet, you've always been a poet. And we're gonna look at ways how poetry has kind of helped me at different crossroads in my life. So 2 of my favorite things to do at Crossroads is to move or go to grad school. It's true, I have a PhD now, so that's off the table. And moving's basically off the table too. I'm a 4th generation Floridian, so I'm back, yes. Okay, so in 2010, I graduated from college. I was a journalist, and I studied English literature, and this was around the recession. And I also had my first heartbreak, so of course I moved. It's a key thing for me. I moved to Chicago, and as part of that move, I started working at this place called the Museum of Science and Industry down in Hyde Park. And what was really interesting about that for me was that I started working with a bunch of comedians. And so I was a poet at the time. I was writing breakup poems, obviously, processing my breakup, and just thinking about life. And I was also leading an open mic at a coffee shop. So I was already kind of performing, but I didn't really consider myself like a capital P poet. I was just someone who wrote poetry and liked writing it. And so when I was at the Museum of Science and Industry meeting these improvisers, a lot of them worked at Second City, or Groupon was really big at the time. People were writing for Groupon because there's like funny voice. And so while I was there, I met an artist who was also an improviser and a psychic, because it's Chicago and we're all doing multiple things there. And so I wrote a bunch of poems and then she illustrated them. So this was the first zine that I collaborated on with someone in the city, and it's called All the Love Letters I Ever Wrote But Set on Fire Before I Sent Them, AKA Love Hurts. I was more sad person back then. But here's what I realized when you are a sad person going through a breakup surrounded by comedians. They were like, hey, why don't you check this place out and maybe start taking some improv classes or write comedy? And I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm a sad person writing poems. But I realized that I really wanted to laugh, right? So that's a good thing to do when you're sad. So I started going to the Second City, which is the comedy place there, and I started taking writing workshops. They had a year-long comedy sketch writing program there, and so that's kind of what I started doing, and I realized my takeaway, yeah, we can go forward, yes. So I started seeing a lot of comedy, I started performing comedy, and I was not very good at it. I realized something that's really important for me as a creative is to allow yourself to do something just because it's fun and you like it, even especially if you are bad at it. I won't say I was bad at being a comedian, I was just not very good, but that was the key to it. I could do it, I could have fun, I could just relax, and I didn't realize this at the time, but it was building my writing skills and my performance skills. Before that, I was extremely reticent to be in front of other people. I hated how my voice sounded. I got bullied for it throughout school, you know, all that sad person's backstory. And then I realized through performing comedy as well, is like, this is the voice I have. If I let people take it away, then they're going to win in the end, right? So this really helped me, and it also helped me as a teacher as well, feel comfortable. So that was my first Crossroads. And then I applied I was writing about theater and comedy, so then I was reviewing it for a magazine that essentially then went all digital, and I applied for this editor position, and I did not get it. And then they cut the position because like media was changing, still is. So Crossroad number 2, let's go to grad school, which I still support. So I'm going to read a poem now. So when I was in grad school, well, I'll just pause that. When I was in grad school, I was studying nonfiction writing. So at that time, I had been writing poetry and I had been writing comedy, and I thought I was going to be the next David Sedaris, as many young gay people think they're going to be. And so I was writing humor essays, and I was kind of integrating some of my journalism and some of that background in there as well. So my program was nonfiction. That's what I was doing. I was still writing poetry, but it was something I dabbled in. It wasn't something that was my thing. And part of my program is you have to do multi-genre workshops. So if you are a nonfiction writer, that means you have to take a poetry class. If you're a fiction writer, you have to take a nonfiction. So you can kind of dabble in all of these things. I call it ethically non-monogamous with genre. Like, that's just kind of how I see it as, right? And so I had a really interesting moment in grad school where I'm sitting in New Orleans, a bar in New Orleans, talking to a Texan, And she was like, "Oh, you're from Florida? Florida's so weird. What's up with Florida?" In a bar in New Orleans talking to a Texan, which I love weird, culturally specific places, but I'm like, if she's saying Florida's weird, what is up with Florida? And I never really thought about that, right? So as I'm going through grad school, I'm writing, and then I take this poetry class. And I had a very kind of impactful mentor who, from day one, was like, "You are a poet. You just are. You have to just get over it, suck it up. You just are what you are. You're a poet." And so I'm going to read a Florida poem because I started writing about Florida in grad school. Yes, perfect. So a little bit of context, I got really interested in alligators as a symbol of Florida. You know, Floridians, we see them. They're in basically every body of water, including pools sometimes. Um, and I got really interested in them as a metaphor, but also their history in the state. And they're also really interesting in Louisiana as well. I won't get too sidetracked with that, but they're farming alligators for like luxury brands. Like Hermes has like a weird with like these Cajun guys. I was like, that's very bizarre. Let me figure out more about that. So I started really thinking about the alligator. And here's one of the first poems that I wrote about the alligators. Alligator heart. Bag of sugar-sized muscle pumps blood. Most reptiles, 3-chambered heart, but gator, 4 chambers like mammals and birds, which gators used to be millions of years ago when they were dinosaurs. Over time, wings went missing, can't fly no more. Alligator male grows over 12 feet. Florida record, 14 foot, 3.5 inches, found in Brevard County. His heart must keep strong. Animals depend on gator to stay alive. In dry season, he uses mouth and claws to clear roots and marsh, beats tails, and creates mud burrow, a gator hole. Cold-blooded depression helps him stay warm. Holes fill with rain and fresh water drunk by snakes, insects, turtles, and birds, long-lost gator cousins. His heart makes him dangerous, of course, but maybe under scales, thick set of armor, he still feels wings. Remembers a time he flew so free next to clouds. Thank you. So I was writing a lot about Florida at the end of my time in grad school. So of course, we resist the things that we know we need to do. Knew I need to be writing about Florida, resisted it. Until my last, oh, there she is, yes. Until my last semester in grad school. So my thesis has nothing to do with Florida except for living in it, right? So I started writing essays about Florida, which now you can buy in my book over there. But yes, thank you. Or the other one, yes, that's the poems. Both pink. So this is where it gets a little bit heavy. So I was writing essays about Florida, specifically alligators and Florida's history, its culture and environment. I was a journalist, so I was researching, looking in archives. And then I moved back to Florida in 2016 because I was going to finish my book. And so the month that I moved home, the Pulse shooting happened. And so I went to UCF for undergrad in Orlando. And so I knew people who were there that night at the club. And so immediately what I did was I immediately kicked into what can I do for the community, which was writing about it. I was a journalist. So then I went to Orlando to cover the aftermath. I interviewed people that I knew who were there. And so after I was writing about that, things got really heavy. I got very sad, right? I had a friend pass away in that shooting. And so journalists, we kind of go into where the disaster is, and then we're covering it, and then there's not a lot of like, wow, how do we process that, right? And so for me to process that, I was like, I can't really write about Florida right now. I don't have any answers about the state. And so for me, when I'm thinking about writing essays for nonfiction, there needs to be some kind of answer, which isn't prescriptive, write essays however you want, but that's how I was approaching them. So then I really didn't have any answers, and that's when I turned to poetry. Because to me, poetry allows me to ask questions. It's more meditative, it can be associative. People are like, whatever, it's a poem, I don't need a so what, why am I reading this, right? At least that's what I think about it. So I started writing more poems and then asking more questions. And so through that, that's where this book of poetry kind of emerged. And it was called Florida Man Poems, because there's this kind of Florida Man headline throwing I'm sure we know, I don't need to explain that to Floridians, but I was very curious about that. So I was looking up the history of it and archival, like how did that come to be? So I wrote the poems. And this book originally came out in 2018, and it was at a small press and it had a limited run. But part of it was I did the Times Festival of Reading back when it was a big deal. And that was an iconic thing for me to do as someone who grew up in Pinellas County. If you grew up here, going to that was like truly awesome. So it's no longer here, unfortunately. Hopefully, get it back together, Times or whoever. But anyway, so I did a reading there, and this comes back because a lot of the Crossroads, as you may have been able to pick up, are collaborations for me, right? To be in community with other people. The cover of this book was a collaboration I did with an artist who I had met in college. Okay, so this is the new version. So I think we can go on to the next. So my second takeaway is ask as many questions as you need to get an answer. I asked a book's worth of questions to then just be like, okay, I think I might have an answer. So after I wrote the poems, I was able to get back into the essays. This is also where the cross-disciplinary, the multi-genre stuff comes in, right? Also the allowing yourself to be bad. Because while I was in grad school, I was being worse. I was becoming a very bad poet. That's the only way you can be good at anything, is to be bad at it first. So these things are maybe, at least for me. So there's prodigies out there, I'm sure, but I'm not one of them. So these are how these things are merging. And when I look back on my life and think about Crossroads, it's really nothing that I can see until I reflect on how these things are working together, because I was just doing things that I was interested in with people that I found fun and interesting. So that's my second takeaway. Crossroads, Florida, because when isn't Florida a crossroad? That's partially why I love it. So I then went on, I got a job. I was teaching at the University of Mississippi, which is called Ole Miss. A lot of people might know it as that. And then COVID happened. And then as part of that, we were online. So then I moved back to Florida to help take care of my grandmother. And I've been writing about Florida, obviously, so I'm going to read one more poem about Florida. This is a poem that I wrote recently. Yeah. I wrote this poem last month as well. I was at a residency in Connecticut, which was very interesting. I love them if they're watching. I'm so happy to be there. And I wrote this poem, and I read it there as well. Florida is tacky. When Floridians call my home state tacky, it's usually with love, because we know the power in hot pink and understand the beauty of lime green. Houses with a row of plastic flamingos next to a mailbox in the shape of a manatee or some kind of fish. Floridians just get the surrealist and the fashion of visors, fanny packs, a beach cover-up with a bikini printed on it. Obviously, anything airbrushed is objectively cool. Like lighters in the shape of mermaids or drunk alligators. We embody the joy of kitsch and think everyone would be happier if only they owned a tiny sculpture of a person made out of shells. Thank you. The poem keeps going. I just broke it up because I'm like, oh, it needs to be big so people can read it. Maybe it's 2 poems. See? Improv. I think it is 2 poems, y'all. Okay. Look at our landscape. It's lush green, lemons into citrus orange. The ocean paints a spectrum of blues, and have you seen the sunset? It's my favorite piece of abstract art. No wonder we aren't afraid to be bold with our brushstrokes. Our everyday palettes allow us to dream in swamp green, in chartreuse of algal slick, mixed with fiery magenta, a bougainvillea in bloom. Some might prefer a more grayscale life. I can understand the appeal of navy blue and a quiet brick street, but I come from a state with loud neon colors, so I want to taste mango juice as it drips down the sides of my mouth and onto this page. Thank you. Okay. So as this is coming to a culmination, so remember when I was talking about allowing yourself to be bad at things, putting things into the world? So I was a little bit depressed, right, sad again. I took a little pause, something happened personally, and then while I emerged from that, I went to a space, and then it was this church, this queer affirming church under, like in the Opera House, in St. Pete Opera House. And as I was leaving there, I walked under the overpass, and there was like all these artists, vendors. I was like, what is this magical thing? It was the Indie Flea, which I had been gone, I didn't know. I was like, this is so amazing. And so I went to brunch and I told my friends, we have to go back to this thing. And so I did, and the first booth that I went up to was, it's called Print St. Pete. It's a community letterpress and risograph. Yes, give it up for Caitlin Crockett. And so this was like around October, and so she was making like Halloween masks, including one for Gilman, who is like my crush. But anyway, she was writing this zine, which when I showed you that, all the love letters, that's what I call a zine, a DIY publication, like magazine, but DIY. And she was writing something called Sentimental St. Pete, which was about gentrification and all the spaces that we had lost, which is what I'm writing about in my own way. So I was talking to Caitlin, and I bought the zine from her, and she was like, wait, you look familiar. She's like, did you write Florida Man poems and give this reading at the Times Festival of Reading 5 years ago? I was like, why, yes, I did. No, I was like, wait, really? You remember that? That's wild. She's like, I really want to collaborate with more writers. I mostly collaborate with visual artists. And I was also interested, like, St. Pete is having this boom of visual arts, and I was like, where are all the literary artists in these spaces? How are we making money? How are we taking up that space? And this is how we figured it out. So we started making some prints based off the poems, and then she taught me how to make prints. So then I had this whole series of printmaking that is just kind of this new kind of thing. And we can go to the next slide too. And that also put me in contact with other printmakers. And like this black and white one is part of this collective, Fact 727-289-3069, which I'm part of. And we put poetry collages up on the alley for the past year, and it's called Poetry Alley now, and I do it with 2 of my best friends. And so being in community making art has sustained me, not just my artistic practice, but also me emotionally and personally. So I would say to kind of cap, my last thing is, when we think about being at Crossroads, we don't, I do have one more takeaway. Okay, yeah. All roads lead us somewhere unexpected if we keep on them long enough. And dreams change, friends are forever. Which we can go to, which is a Crossroads reference. I made it there. I did it. So that is my takeaway. We don't know where we are going, at least I don't, right? But all the skills we're building and all the friends we're making along the way are leading us to somewhere incredible. And I hope that you meet someone today that is incredible just like you are. Thank you for listening and being here. I appreciate you.
Okay, the 90s baby in me is like screaming over this. When I saw his slide deck at first, I was like, yes, I feel so seen, because when I think of Crossroads, I always think of this film. All right, so we do have like time for like a question. Is there a burning question someone has for Tyler regarding Crossroads or a journey or just something in general? Oh, Sarah? Fantastic. Question thing.
Hey, I'm Sarah, and also UCF Night. I just wanted to say thank you. I work in an industry where, and my sister and I were talking about it, because she worked with a lot of people in Seattle, and this mic hates me too. We're all in it together. And how people look at us when we say we're from Florida, and the fact that you owned it, and you said, no, but it's beautiful, and you're wrong. So thank you for that on a national scale, because like, as much as people talk trash about us, I was at a party in Gainesville, and my friends and I were talking, and we said the national motto should be, or the state motto should be, and what? Because people throw things at us, and we're like, and what? Like, 2 hurricanes back to back? What? So just thank you. I love this place with my whole heart, and to the kitschiness of it all, when we're smacked down, your neighbor helps you out no matter what side of the political aisle they're on, because we're all in this together. So I love this place. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Sarah. Do we have, just out of curiosity, is there any generational Floridians here with us today in the crowd? Yeah? A couple of us? Fantastic. Yeah, so then you get the kitschiness of Florida. We love our imperfect state. Yes. I like to keep us on track. So Tyler is going to hang around for a few minutes, and please check out his books. Another warm round of applause for Tyler. Headshot already too. He needs to get a headshot of you. Okay. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to bring us to a close and just wrap up with some of our and a poetry prompt. Wait, your poetry prompt. You got to do that.
Ooh, I forgot. Woo. Poetry prompt. What color is your life right now? Describe this feeling, color with as much detail as you can in a 1-minute poem, which circles back to the 4-minute poem. I'll just, one quick takeaway. When you're writing, what detail is specific to you? So like if you're a musician, what language do you have to approach something that makes it unique to you? So the prompt was like just a 30-second thing, and then we were gonna share with each other and like meet someone, but we can do that for 30 seconds? Do it. Take out your phone, take out your writing utensil, use your whatever you have. I like to write on the Notes app. We have paper. Oh yeah, they gave. Thank you. What color is your life? Or if that feels too daunting, what color do you want your life to be?
All right. Does anyone want to share what color their life is right now? Anyone feel really strongly about their life choice, their color life choice? Yeah? Zetta's going to share.
It might be obvious, but mine is dark green. Yeah. It says, I sing in blues and play a gold instrument, but dark green keeps me grounded.
Oh,
okay. Yellow, bright and optimistic, sunny, friendly, warm, a new day, a world of possibilities.
And Kat was one of our speakers as well, and if you went to her, she was literally the sun. So yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right, well, please stick around, share with yourself, share with your friends, post what you wrote if you're interested, and tag us in it. We would love to see what more people wrote about what color your life is right now. So please interact with us on socials. We'd love to see what your prompt led to. So is there any other surprises? Let's see. Nope, that's it. He said, that's it. That's done. Cool. Thanks, Tyler. All right.